They just cannot think destruction. Crowds of ZANU-PF supporters streamed in the domestic arena in the Equity, Harare, on Saturday night, and each man I tell to had the identical belief: Emmerson Mnangagwa, who succeeded Mr. Mugabe as CEO, was departure to gain and win large. He's go be an completely resonant win for Emmerson Mnangagwa, told Stanley Boat, a youthful entrepreneur of Harare. Thou include to believe all he has reached with upcoming in office space. Lot other just laughed while I offered the opportunity of an opposition win. Within the arena bands play, rappers rapped. The side went on. ZANU-PF has large finance asset, monitoring of the country print and vast powers of nursing. In the almost 40-year with autonomy, winner by equitable tool or filthy is a ZANU-PF heritage. At the cardiac of CEO Mnangagwa's campaigning put an implied trust how Zimbabweans will be readily to overlook, if not pardon, his own and his side's terrible recording of mismanagement and human rights atrocity. The alligator who snuck behind his side's campaigning publication and rhetorical stresses the imperatives of the this, invest, jobs, formation and public health thoroughness. In reality all of the things how were constantly destroyed in many decades of ZANU-PF guideline. But Mr. Mnangagwa believes the human beings should be thankful since he and his company inspirators in the troop rid the nation of Robert Mugabe recent November. The prayer, Zimbabwe is outdoor for industry, is reiterated continually as the governing side presents himself as the underwriter of depositor-friendly sustainability. Always with the war intervene of recent November, the new CEO has been at effort to escape apologizing for the atrocity of the history since, as he declared to me newly, he was ever for world. I requested if he would show humbleness and recognize his own liability. He rejected, insisting to me how he had never been merciless but was as gentle as fur. The is the significant fictitious for a man hard to convince the world society and his own human beings how he represents a various ZANU-PF to the one they knew and afraid. Yet Mr. Mnangagwa was as shut as it was probable to be to decisions how applied terrorism and poverty. In latter days I passing to Matabele land in the southward of the nation to encounter survivors of the massacres of the previous 1980s while soldiers of the Polar Korean trained 5 team transferred out a campaigning of torment and murder. Attacks by dissidents opposed to Mr. Mugabe outdoor the way for wave propagation of terrorism aimed versus the perceivable policy enemies of by the government. The class was advanced for the dissidents to involve thousands of members of the Matabele human beings of the identical ethnical team as Mr. Mugabe's enemy at the period, Joshua Komu. Mr. Mnangagwa was later country safety secretary. His shut friend, Prince Shirai, the present farming secretary, is memorable in Matabele land as captain of the 5 team in the moniker of Dark Jesus since he could solve who lived and who dead. Sinakiwinkib was 12-year-old while 2 strangers emerging at the doorway of her household close Balagwe countryside. They requested my dad to go in them and we never saw him once again. Her dad, Samson Kube, was a tutor and may include Ben Aim since he was an educated man person, the type of drawing whose speech were trust by original inhabitants. I requested Ms. Kube if she was readily to pardon such accountable for his extinction. How can we pardon while the perpetrators include not recognized which they did, while they include not apologized? Let them go and say disappointed and later we can pardon, she told. Campaign participant Dumisane Pafo, of the Humane Rights Team Liberty at first, said me how the ram of history atrocities would quick voters to deny CEO Mnangagwa. Certainly, it is a taking into account, he told. It is potential to impact human beings to believe otherwise, knowledge they might give enforce a policy side capable to construct stable world for their next. But in several encounters I found caution. I include anything to tell, a youthful tradesman answered while I requested how she thick felt on the pole. I tested to get a specimen of view on the powder-blown major road of Mafisa, a little city close the infamous Diker pit wherever bodies were discarded in the 1980s. A team of men was wait external a coffee house, hoping to choose up accidental labor. But they were averse to say. Two female on their way to an opposition gathering shook their heads and walked off while I requested for their view. On the side of a hut in Balagwe countryside, I noted a banner bearing the person of CEO Nangagwe. So thou re a ZANU-PF advocate? I requested the female residing down there. No at all, she replied, how's fair my panel in instance they go inviting. The expertise of the Matabele land massacres is restricted to an older general in a clear geographic region. But more than latter riots stay in the minds of voters through Zimbabwe. The crackdowns how accompanied the poll of 2008 saw murders and beatings. Onto humane rights look up to 200 human beings were annihilated, more than rather than 5,000 incurred forcible misuse and more than rather than 30,000 were moved. The period about down there has been anything love how abuse. But down there are insistent complaints of bullying, the policy of peaceful but insistent risk in little villages. Down there are hundreds of world observers developed for these elections, but can they expect to reveal which happens while a conventional lead or governing side formal warns villagers in remotely places? The concept how the governing side saw and heard all was thoroughly encouraged in history polls. The poll is a testing not just of policy supporting but of person liberty. The opposition motion for more democratic changing, MDC, has charged the Zimbabwe Election Committee, ZEC, the flesh that oversees the survey, of prejudice and hubris. It has complained often on irregularities in the voters' coil and the safety of voting papers. At one spot in the history few days the MDC vigorously discussed boycotting the survey. But wrath above history abuse and concoction of present bullying may act to the benefit of the opposition. An View survey recent 1 week saw the MDC shut the gap in ZANU-PF of 11% points to 3 Indiana 20% of voters indecisive. It is just the other of 2 View polls, so several extent of diligence is informed. The definitive MDC gathering of the campaigning in Harare drew a mob of lot thousands. By its new lead, Nelson Chamisa, a attorney and minister, the side's election meetings include undertaken on the fervor of a revivalist campaigning. The crusade take on Zimbabwe's alligator. He has been criticized for manufacturing eccentric promises, the introduce of a top-speed shot boat train, earning the Spartakiada to Zimbabwe, but junior Zimbabweans in special enjoy his power and hopefulness. More than rather than 40% of recorded voters are by the age of 35. A general how has lived in ruthless economical decrease and corrupt practices by ZANU-PF may be readily to ignore Mr. Chamisa's more than overseas statements in back for the gem offer of expect. At the gathering I met Audrey Garakara, a print teaching grade who has been jobless without going school in 2014. She said me economical despair done her campaigning for an MDC win. The is our year. We will include a complementary Zimbabwe. Complementary of corrupt practices. We are winner the poll. On both of sides down there is trust. History expertise would propose how the force of the ZANU-PF car and the pledge of sustainability will see Mr. Nangagwe legitimize his chairmanship. But Mr. Chamisa has run a powerful campaigning, vigorously cross the nation, purification his communication to attention on more than probable economical ambitions. He was fair 2-year-old while Mr. Nangagwe united Mr. Mugabe in the at first position independence office in 1980. On Monday the two will struggle for the next of Zimbabwe in an poll whose result is tantalizingly difficult to forecast.